You are watching Shadowin', where the stories are real, and the fear is too. Okay guys, thank you for sticking with us this late. I've had 3 cups of coffee, and I still feel like I'm going to throw up. Because honestly, the story we're kicking off with, the thumbprint on the microwave, it's one of those creeping paranoia posts that just ruins mundane life forever. This one came from a listener named Jess up near Detroit, dealing with apartment living and something that just shouldn't leave marks. My therapist, yeah, I had to get one after last year. She calls it environmental stress, but dude, I'm telling you, it was something else. This was maybe 5 years ago. I was sharing an apartment with 2 other guys. It was one of those places where the carpet in the hallway was permanently damp and smelled like old cigarettes and disappointment. It was cheap though, and close to campus. I was already off my game. I hadn't taken my meds that morning. I get these massive occipital headaches when I skip them, like someone is squeezing your brainstem. And all I wanted was to nuke a Hot Pocket and pass out. It was 3 a.m. The kitchen was totally dark, except for the green display on the microwave, flashing 1200, 1200, 1200. I chucked the Hot Pocket in, hit the 1-minute button, and leaned against the counter, waiting. The microwave was white, old GE model, slightly yellowed plastic. It vibrated when it cooked. I don't know why I looked at the side of it. I just did. The kitchen had one of those fluorescent light strips that hummed and flickered, and when it hit the white plastic on the side of the microwave, I saw it. At first, I thought it was grime, like maybe oil from takeout or something the last tenant left. But it wasn't smears. It was a print. A handprint. But not like fingers spread out. It was a dense, almost perfectly circular black mark, about the size of a catcher's mitt, and it was compressed. It looked less like something touching the plastic, and more like something shoving the plastic inward, super hard. I frowned, rubbing my head. Maybe Tim had spilled something dark? Grease? I ran my finger over it. It was dry, totally dry, and smooth. But here's the thing, guys. When I touched it, I realized what I was looking at. It wasn't surface dirt. It was inside the plastic. It looked like when you press your thumb hard onto a piece of foam and the color just saturates and deepens where the pressure is. Except this was hard plastic, right? It was white plastic. And this area, this huge, circular, dense area, was deep, absolute black. Like soot mixed into the actual material. The microwave beeped. I pulled out the steaming, lukewarm Hot Pocket and put it on a plate. I stared at the mark. I took my shirt sleeve and rubbed at it, hard. It didn't budge. I got Windex and scrubbed the thing, like I was trying to dissolve the appliance. Nothing. The black just stayed there. A perfect compressed circle on the side. Like something giant had just gripped the appliance and left its total density behind. I texted Tim, the cleanest roommate. Did you spill something black on the microwave? Tim texted back immediately. No. Dude, that thing has been there forever. What are you talking about? No, I mean the giant black smudge. It's not a smudge, Jess. It's inside the plastic. It's been like that since we moved in. Why? Does it freak you out? It didn't freak me out. It terrified me. Because I had literally never seen it before. And if it had been there forever, why did I only see it when I was standing there alone, half medicated, at 3 a.m.? And why did it look so much like the impression of a giant, crushing palm? I spent the next 3 days avoiding the kitchen. When I finally had to make dinner, the mark was still there. I was cooking chicken, and the light from the stovetop hit it weirdly. And I saw something else. In the dead center of the black circle, there was a single, tiny point where the white plastic had completely disappeared, like a micropuncture. And around that puncture, radiating out, were 5 incredibly faint lines etched into the plastic, deep inside the black impression. They were fingernail marks. Not fingernails like mine, but thick, blunt grooves, like if you tried to press your thumb and fingertips through steel. It was the size of a dinner plate. It was compressed plastic. It had 5 dense, dark grooves, and 1 hole where something had pushed through. That night, I slept on the couch with the lights on, holding a screwdriver. I felt like the entire building was being held up by that microwave, and whatever was holding it was about to squeeze harder. I moved out 2 days later. I literally left my deposit, my winter coat, and half my textbooks. I didn't care. I just told the roommates I was having a mental breakdown and left the keys on the counter. I still drive past that complex sometimes. The window to my old apartment is always dark. I don't know if the microwave is still there, but I know what I saw. It wasn't a smudge. It was the impression of something that had the power to crush the appliances we use every day. And it did it just to leave a mark. A huge black thumbprint, saying, "I was here." And it felt like it had only just pressed it, 5 minutes before I saw it. I don't know what to say to that. The idea that trauma can be embedded in an object's actual molecular structure, it's just a terrifying thought, right? You can't wash that off. Be careful. Okay, we need to reset a little. Let's move on. This next entry, Interstate 77 and the Dead Air, was submitted by a trucker, Ray, who was running the Cincinnati to Charlotte route, and got a lesson in what happens when infrastructure fails. Or when infrastructure doesn't want you there. So Ray was running his load, right? It was late summer, maybe midnight, and he was taking 77 through southern West Virginia, heading down into the mountains. This part of the highway, it's all elevation changes, tunnels, and that high-altitude radio static where you can't get 2 clean minutes of Dolly Parton, which he said was driving him freaking nuts. He kept fiddling with the dial, trying to lock onto a classic rock station, but it was just white noise and a horrible, tinny song he couldn't recognize playing under it, like a distorted organ. He stopped at a crappy little gas station just before the big tunnels. He got gas and a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt plastic and old socks. The attendant was this super skinny kid, maybe 16, just staring at the wall. Ray paid cash, noticed he had a dark brown stain on the chest of his shirt he couldn't place, maybe gravy, maybe old oil. And he felt this weird little hitch in his breath, like the air was getting thin. He got back in the rig, adjusted the rearview mirror — he hates driving with a dirty mirror — and pulled back out. He was maybe 5 miles past the gas station, starting the slow climb. It was dark, pitch black. Not a single town light reflecting anywhere, just the truck's high beams cutting through the mountain air. And then he hit it. It wasn't a bump. It wasn't a pothole. It was like driving into a wall of absolute silence. 1 second the engine was roaring, the tires were grinding pavement. The radio was hissing that awful organ music. And the next, absolute, immediate quiet. The engine didn't die. The truck didn't stop. But all the sound just got vacuumed out of the cab. He looked down. The speedometer was dropping rapidly. He'd been doing 65. Now he was doing 50. Then 40. He hadn't touched the brake. He stomped on the gas pedal. Nothing. The truck was barely responsive. It felt like he was driving through concrete, like something was clamping down on the rig. He gripped the wheel, starting to sweat. He checked his mirrors again. The darkness behind him wasn't normal night dark. It was the kind of dark that seemed to absorb light. The road markers that should have reflected his headlights were just dull, black spots. He felt this pressure, too. Not outside, but inside the cab. It felt like walking out of an airplane when you land. That pop in your ears, but sustained and constantly increasing. His ears were ringing, painful, and he felt his skull pressing against his brain. He looked out the driver's side window at the sheer cliff face rising up right next to him. He could see his reflection in the glass, panicked. But through his reflection, he saw the road. And that's when the real panic hit. The road was twisting. Not the highway itself, the asphalt. He said it looked like a giant hand had just grabbed the 4 lanes of Interstate 77 and wrung it out like a wet towel. The solid lines were wobbling, becoming liquid black stripes. The pavement itself was rippling, not like water, but like heavy compressed clay being pulled. And the pressure outside became an actual presence. Ray described it as being trapped under an invisible, absolutely gigantic hand that was slowly closing its fist around the truck. The cab started creaking, the steel groaning under the unseen load. He looked up at the sun visor, just instinctively, and he saw it, or the residue of it. The inside of the visor was coated in fine black dust, like extremely fine, dark soot. He had the vents closed, the windows were sealed tight. Where did the soot come from? And as the truck slowed down to maybe 15 miles an hour, totally fighting the engine and the gas pedal, the soot started to move. It didn't drift. It slid across the plastic visor, gathering in one central location right above his head, forming a perfectly sharp circle, maybe 2 feet wide. He couldn't breathe. He felt his lungs collapsing under the external weight. He mashed the radio buttons, desperate for noise, desperate for proof that reality was still functioning. But the radio just screamed white noise. Except now, the white noise sounded like millions of tiny little bones snapping simultaneously. The cab was flexing. The windshield was starting to haze over, not with condensation, but with the black dust pressing down from the outside. He closed his eyes, figuring this was it. The truck was going to get crushed into a pancake on Interstate 77, and nobody would find him until the next day because the spot he was in was so isolated. Then, just as abruptly as it began, it ended. There was a massive, violent pop in his ears. The engine roared back to life, suddenly speeding up too fast, hitting 60 instantly. The sound came back, a sudden rush of wind noise, and the dreadful organ song on the radio. The pavement was smooth again. The lines were straight. The darkness was just regular, boring Appalachian night. Ray pulled over immediately. He was shaking so hard he almost couldn't unlock the door. He jumped out and looked at the roof of the cab. Nothing. Clean metal. No dents. He checked the inside. The black soot was gone from the visor, dissolved into nothingness. The only thing left was the metallic chemical smell of ozone and smelled burnt plastic. And he had a splitting headache, and his left ear was bleeding a little bit. He just drove. Didn't stop for 3 hours. Didn't even look in the rearview mirror until he was well into North Carolina. He said he still drives that route because, it's his job. But every time he passes through those tunnels, he looks at the side of the road and he thinks about that crushing weight. And he knows that somewhere on that stretch of 77, there's a few hundred yards of highway that an invisible, enormous black thing uses as its private squeeze toy. And he knows it could stop him anytime it wants. That is utterly disorienting. The sheer spatial distortion. It's not just a ghost story. It's like the road itself decided it wanted to reject the physics of the universe. I literally have chills. I need a drink of water. Hold on a second. Okay. Our final story for tonight. This one really messes with the line between sleep paralysis and reality. It's called What Died Under the Couch. And honestly, this guy's experience with moving furniture is going to make you nervous about spring cleaning forever. This was Sam, living in Portland, Oregon, in a terrible old third-floor walk-up. He was behind on rent, like 2 months, and the landlord was calling him every freaking hour. He was stressed out, subsisting on stale chips and cheap beer, and generally just feeling like his whole life was crushing him. He was experiencing really intense sleep paralysis, too. This isn't abnormal for him, but this was different. Usually it's just a shadow figure or the heavy weight, but recently it had become specifically focused. He felt pinned down, like someone was sitting on his chest, but the weight felt wrong. It felt bony and angular, not fleshy, and cold. One night, around 4 a.m., he woke up pinned. He couldn't move his head, couldn't blink, and he realized the paralysis wasn't centered on his chest. It was centered on his hips, pressing him into the mattress. He tried to scream, but the air wouldn't move. He felt the cold, hard weight sinking him further down. And he heard this sound, like a deep, shuddering, rasping noise, right next to his left ear. He managed to move his eyes slightly. He looked at the wall next to his bed and saw the wallpaper, old, peeling, beige stuff, and saw this movement. It wasn't a shadow, it was textural. There was something black and flat, like wet roofing felt, sliding slowly across the wall, parallel to the floor, just inches above the baseboard. It wasn't solid. It looked like dense, shifting shadow that had somehow acquired density, and it dragged itself with something. Something long and slender, sticking out from the main mass of the shadow on the wall. It looked like a finger, but wrong. Too long, too thin, and jet black with no visible knuckles. It was pulling the main mass, centimeter by agonizing centimeter. The weight on his hips was absolute agony now. He felt like his spine was bowing the wrong way. The rasping noise was louder. He realized the hand that was pulling the shape along the wall, that slender black digit, was tracing a line directly from his bed, across the floor, and under the big, ugly vintage couch he had bought at a thrift store. The paralysis lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like 3 days of torture. When it finally snapped, Sam shot up, gasping. His hips ached, and he had a terrifying cold numbness across his lower body. He tried to go back to sleep, but the image of that slender black finger dragging the shadow under the couch was burned into his retinas. The next morning, his lower back was completely seized up. He couldn't straighten. He was literally bent over at the waist. He was trying to figure out if he needed to call a chiropractor or a priest, when he remembered the couch. That couch was heavy. Like, heavy enough that two normal people struggled to move it. But he had to look. He needed to know what the shadow went to. Driven by pure terror and a shot of cheap whiskey, he managed to shove the thing over, scraping the hardwood floor violently. He looked under where the couch had been sitting for 2 years. Dust bunnies, loose change, and maybe one petrified mouse. And then he saw it. Right against the wall, tucked under the lip of the couch frame. It was a hand. Not a skeleton, not a decay, not a dried-up thing. It looked impossibly fresh, yet totally preserved. It was the size of a child's hand, but it was adult proportioned. Totally black. Not dirty black, but the density of old, dark mahogany. And it wasn't made of skin and bone. It looked like it was carved from extremely dense, dark wood or compressed wet charcoal. It had 5 fingers, and they were all curled inward into a perfect fist, except for the index finger, which was extended out. That index finger was long, thin, and stained with something that looked like dried wax or tallow. It was impossibly perfect, impossibly heavy, and impossibly there. He didn't touch it. He just stared at it, connecting the dots. The cold weight on his hips, the sliding shadow, the rasping breath, and the index finger tracing the route to the furniture. This thing wasn't a body part that fell off something. It looked like an anchor. Like something used this object, this compacted black fist, to hold itself in this physical reality and crush him when he slept. It was the physical manifestation of the crushing weight he felt every night. Sam didn't clean it up, didn't call the cops, didn't try to wrap it up in a towel. He was too afraid that if he moved it, whatever owned it would come back for its hand. Instead, he did the only thing he could think of. He pushed the couch back over it. He shoved it so hard he cracked the drywall. He paid the 2 months of overdue rent in cash the next day and moved out by the end of the week, never looking under that couch again. He still lives in Portland, but he can't buy upholstered furniture. He sleeps on a futon that sits directly on the floor, and sometimes, when he bends over to tie his shoes, he gets that cold, seizing pain in his hips, and he feels, just for a second, the absolute, crushing weight of something that used a black, compact fist to pin him down in his own apartment. He knows that hand is still under that couch, and it's still waiting for someone new to sleep above it. Well, that is a rough way to end the night. Honestly, I'm glad I don't own a microwave anymore, or drive on Interstate 77, or have a couch. If these stories have done anything, it's convinced me that our own trauma is reflected in the objects around us, sometimes physically. If you've enjoyed these highly specific and deeply upsetting realities, make sure you hit subscribe to Shadowin for more absolute chaos. Good night, and try not to look under the bed.